Off to introduce. So my name is Larry Chang, and I'm Associate Director of the Global mHealth Initiative. Alan LaBrique is the director. And it's a great pleasure to co-host this with the Preventive Medicine residency. This is Nina and Yahe. And just from kind of working in the field, it's great if you're interested in e-health, telemedicine, mHealth, but if you can actually bring to the table actual programming skills as well, it is just such a huge asset and such a huge benefit. So I think it's great that we're having this session, and I think it's clear from the amount of people here that there's a lot of interest in this. So turn it over to Nina, and welcome everybody.
Great. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for coming. This is definitely the biggest turnout that we've seen. We're really excited about it. This session is one in a series, so we had one before. You're kind of coming into number two. Oh, number three, actually. And we're going to keep them going, hopefully weekly or as often as we can. So just keep an eye out in your emails if you like this and you want to keep coming back and learning more. Obviously, you're not going to learn everything you need to know about programming in an hour, but we hope you'll at least get familiar with it and maybe a little bit comfortable looking at what is code and a little bit of how you actually write it. So as we're getting the PowerPoint set up, I just want to make sure a couple of things. You guys have your laptops out, that's great. If you could make sure that you have the program, it's called Sublime Text 2, and it works on Windows or Mac. Just make sure you have that downloaded and installed. And then just to keep things uniform, we want everyone to have the latest Google Chrome, and that'll be the browser we use to actually look at the code that you're creating. So just take a couple minutes now while we're getting set up to get those installed. And if you have any questions or run into any problems, just wave your hand, I'll come over and help you out.
Thank you so much. So this is awesome. This is the third time we're doing this. No, actually, I think this is the fourth time we're doing this. And we have had packed rooms, but this one is much more packed than normal because usually we've had seats and obviously somebody doesn't have a seat there. But if you want to come up here, you can totally come up here. Okay. Okay, so the way we're doing this is a very modular approach. So if you haven't attended the previous sections, it's totally fine. The previous 3 sessions, 2.5 sessions that we did, they were about HTML, CSS, and we try to get a little bit into JavaScript. This time around, we're going to go more into JavaScript and jQuery. But even if you don't even know what that means, you've never encountered it, it doesn't matter. And if you haven't seen HTML and CSS, it doesn't matter. But the reason is because we're going to look at these independently of each other, but we're going to be making an app, together, putting them all together. And the purpose, as Nina said, the purpose of this series is by the end of the session, hopefully by end of April, by end of May, we actually intend to have a workable app that you guys can use. But it's a very public health approach. So we're going to be using open data sets that are out there that the CDC puts out, that the Department of Health and Human Services puts out, and we're going to be looking at things that are relevant to medicine and public health. Okay. So for our example today for JavaScript, what we wanted to do was look at something called the CHADS2 score. The CHADS2 score is basically something that you use in order to see if someone should be given aspirin or warfarin when they're being discharged, right? But before we get into that CHADS2 score, I think what we'll do first is get an overlay of JavaScript. We're going to start off by looking at the inputs that we need. So these are the things we're going to look at. So we're going to look at input types. So the question is, how do you get input from somebody sitting in front of a computer? And then we're going to ask, okay, once you get the input, how do you process it? And then how do you spit something back out? Okay. How many people attended previous sessions before? Okay, that's perfect. So let's just get started. So everyone has something like this, right? So this is Sublime Text. So open a blank page. Actually, it should look black, and go ahead and save it as a HTML document. I'm going to save it as index B because I already have index A in this particular folder. So .html. Okay, and then go ahead and find where that is on your desktop or wherever you saved it, and then open it up and see what happens. Okay. Did everybody do that? So you save a file in Sublime Text, and then you open it up in the browser, and it should just be a blank browser, right? Is that what everybody has? No? Okay, Nina's going to come and take a look at you. Everybody else has a blank page, yeah? So basically, you're opening a document, an empty document in Sublime Text. You save it as a .html, and then when you click on it, it opens up in your browser. So this is something that I want to point out. One of the things that we do in the sessions too is give you mental models to work with. So the mental model for this is, imagine when you do a PowerPoint presentation, right? When you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, see right here, I have a PowerPoint presentation. If I want to change input types and I want to make the T capital, how would I do it? How would I do it?
Exit the presentation.
Okay, right. So exactly. So I exit the presentation. I actually go to the PowerPoint slide page, and then I go to T. Is this familiar to everybody? I make capitalize and press save, and then come back here, and lo and behold, it's capitalized, right? Does that make sense? Web programming works the exact same way. So what you do is, in this program, you actually make changes, and then in the browser, that's the same thing as a presentation. This is where the changes show up. Okay, and you'll see that as we go ahead and start working with this. Another way to think about this is, when you want to make an Adobe Acrobat document, you don't go ahead and start typing into Adobe Acrobat by itself, right? You usually type it in Microsoft Word, save it, and then convert it into Adobe document, and then you pull it up, all of a sudden you have a PDF document, right? Exact same thing. So that's exactly what a browser does. A browser is just a way to display what you have written in the back end, and then text editor, which is what Sublime Text 2 is a way to go ahead and start typing stuff in to make changes. Okay, so for people who have attended previous sessions, what's the first thing that we do once we start this kind of document? So you have to tell the computer what kind of document you're starting, right? So what kind of document is this going to be? HTML, right? Good. I heard somebody say HTML. Okay, that's perfect. So we tell the computer document type should be HTML. What's the short form way? Because computer speaks in Twitter language, okay? So like as short as possible. So what's the shortest way to say it? Doc type HTML, right? So right off the bat, you tell the computer it's going to be HTML document type, okay? What are the two parts to a HTML document? Exactly, head and a body, right? Head. So you open tag, and every time you open a tag, you have to close the tag too, right? Can you guys see this? Better?
So when you do the type, do you have the exclamation sign head?
Yeah, so for the very initial one where you tell the computer there's an HTML document, for that one you go ahead and start off with the exclamation sign, and then you say the document type is HTML. The reason you do that is because in the past the browsers needed to know what version of HTML it was, but right now if you're all using HTML5, the browser understands implicitly. When you say HTML, it's going to be HTML5. And then you say head, and then you have a body. And then for every time you open a tag, this is called opening a tag. And in closing a tag, you just do a backslash and you just repeat the same thing. Okay, what goes in the head and what goes in the head?
Formatting the style in the head.
Exactly. Okay, so all the cognitive stuff, the brainy stuff, all the mental stuff, the brains, they go in the head, right? All the content, the form, the shape, just the writing and stuff, that goes in the body, okay? So it's pretty straightforward. So we're just going to try one thing before we go ahead. So let's just write a paragraph. How do you write it? Right. So this is called a tag. This is the head tag, close tag, body open tag, body close tag. And inside the body, you want to communicate to the computer that you're going to talk. You're about to write a paragraph, right? So what you do is you tell the computer you're going to write a paragraph by saying paragraph, right? It's very simple. So it's just a P, open, close. Okay, so open tag, this is the open tag, and this is the close tag. So in between, you write something. You write hello world. Okay, save it, go back to here and refresh this page. So you see what happened? You wrote a paragraph, and in between the two tags, the open tag and the close tag for the paragraph, you wrote hello world. Press save, and then when you go back here and refresh this, you get hello world. Did that work for everybody? Yeah? Okay, perfect. Is there anybody that's stuck? Nina is amazing. She's probably better than me at this, so you're lucky that you have her circulating there. So if you guys need some help, just put up your hand and she's going to be more than happy to help you. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we are able to convey information. So we want to get information back from people, right? So we want to get input into the computer. So if you want to tell the computer that you're about to give input, what do you tell the computer? What do you think the tag would be? So we communicate, we tell the computer things in tags, right? So if you're going to write a paragraph, you write P for paragraph, right? If you're going to put a break, like if you're going to have one paragraph and you're going to put a different paragraph much down the line, and you want to put a space in the middle, you want to put a break, you tell the computer literally in a tag, you put BR, which is short form for break. So if you're going to tell the computer, I'm going to put some input in here, I want to input text box, what do you tell the computer? What do you think? Gut feeling, what do you think the tag would be? I'm sorry? Exactly, perfect. So it would be I for input, right? Exactly. Except it's not I. It's actually input. You have to spell it out. But it is input. So there's no short form for this. Okay. So there are different types of input. Okay. So if you just do input, save it, and then go back to your web page, refresh it, and see what happens. What do you guys see? Did you guys try it? So make this tag. You get a box, right? Did everybody get a box? Who else got a box? Put up your hand. Okay, perfect, good, great. So type something into the box. Go ahead and type something. Click on it and type something into the box. Can you type stuff in there? Yeah? Right, perfect. So you can type stuff in there, right? Okay, well, the default, whenever you say input, the default is the box, right? But it's not the only type of input that you have. You can have other types of inputs too, right? So what we're going to do this session is we're going to look at the different types of inputs first, and then we're going to go back and see how you can how you can grab that input and send it to the computer. Does anybody have any questions at this point? It's not appearing to me. It's not appearing to you? Okay, Nina's going to be right there.
Is there a way to annotate in it that we won't get read?
Yeah, so you mean put in comments?
Yeah, that's yourself.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, that's a very important question. And the way to do it is to do it like this. So you put an open tag, exclamation mark, and 2 dashes, right? And then you can put anything you want in there, and the computer doesn't detect it as code; it detects it as a comment. And the comments are actually extremely important because that's how, once the code gets really long, that's how you know what you're actually writing. Any other question?
What is the exclamation point?
It's just a way of telling. So all of this code, the way it's the reason it's code is because it gets converted into a different language. That it's a much lower level language, and that language is what communicates with the computer. They have some conventions in order to tell the computer that, hey, this is a this particular, if somebody has this combination of characters, it means don't consider it a code. If they have a certain combination of characters, consider it something else, right? So the combination that they randomly, arbitrarily selected for this is exclamation mark and 2 dashes. Okay. Within JavaScript itself, you can just have backslashes as well, or backslashes or asterisks.
So I heard if you want to do like IE6 hack, you will also use that kind of combination of code.
Oh, you mean in order to make it compatible to different browsers? Yeah, exactly. And that you actually put it above the head. But within here, if you want to make a comment, then you go ahead and put it. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so here are some input types. Okay. Let's try several of these, and then you'll understand like why this is so cool. So let's try. So we saw a text box, right? So
Sorry, real quick. Why do you not have to end the tag with input?
Okay, so input is a unique. That's a really good question. So if you notice, for every single tag that we have an open tag, and you have a closed tag, right? Input is the only one where you actually have an open tag. That's it. It's its own self-closing tag. If you choose just for convention, or if you forgot and you put a closed input tag, it doesn't do anything. So it's okay. You can do that if you want, but it's really not. It's just a single tag. It's the only one. So if you really need to, I think that and something else. All right. So let's take a look at this. Okay. So let's take a look at several different types of inputs before we learn how to graph inputs, right? So the type by default is this text box, right? This is the text default. If you just put input, you tell the computer, I'm going to give you input, and you don't tell the computer what kind of input you're going to give it, it's automatically just going to make a text box for you to take an input from the user, right? If you say button, what do you think is going to be? Button, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and try that. So there's a little button here, and it doesn't really have much in it. So you actually have to tell the computer what the value is going to be. So okay, so you have to tell the computer. So on the you have to tell the computer what to write on there, right? So usually with buttons you write submit, or you can write anything else you want to. You can write my button, right? But then, so here's what I wanted to ask you guys. If you want to tell the computer what the value on this should be, what's the code word that you use? The code word is value equal to, right? If you want to tell the computer that I want to make a button here, you write, I want an input of type button, okay? Now let's try something else, okay? I want an input of type text, back to text. But I want you to tell it explicitly. Don't just put input. I want you to tell the computer explicitly that I want an input text box. So let's go ahead and try that, and then we'll do it together. I'll give you guys like maybe 30 seconds. And if you got it, just put up your hand. Once you actually get it, put up your hand. All right. So did anybody get it? You got it? Oh, so what did you do for the type? Well, how did you do it?
I just did type equals box and then parentheses.
Right. So you can just do type equal to box or text. I think text is the code word to do it. So you go back here and you click you click refresh, and it should be that. And if you say value equal to my button, then that's what is going to pre-populate this box with. So when you start, when you click on it, before you click on it, that's what's going to be there. Okay. So you can write. Usually in the box, we want to write something as a first value. Does that make sense? Yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't know if you'll get to this, but can you do like drop-down boxes? Like, is there?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Is drop-down the?
Yeah, I think drop-down is the. Is it drop-down? I'm not sure what the code word is for that. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you. There's actually a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of different input types.
I got it.
Drop-down is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
But what I want you guys to do is, I think there are like 30 different types, and I really don't remember all 30 of them. But then what you can do is, I'm going to put this PowerPoint somewhere. And if you check this website out, and there are a bunch of websites online that actually list all of them and more, you can actually find it. But these ones are some cool ones that I wanted to check. So if you want to do a checkbox, I keep showing it to you guys before asking you guys, but I should ask you guys. If you want to do a checkbox, you want to tell the computer, I want an input type that's a checkbox, what do you do?
Oh,
Sure, you had a question?
The input, what if you just did the button ID?
Oh, that's really good. Oh, we're gonna get to the ID part in just a second. Maybe once I go through the inputs, then we're gonna get to the ID part.
Oh, just want to do something different though?
Yeah, I just want to do something different because this way it's more consistent because all types of inputs, all you have to do is change the type, whereas all the input commands remain the same. Okay. So you just say input type box, input type text, input type button, etc. Any other questions? Is everybody getting this so far?
So when you say checkbox, what goes into the value?
Checkbox. So that value you can set by yourself, and depending on how many checkboxes you want.
You want to put the box like down, not like next. So I put the thing that the text box and the button. I kept that in there. But if you wanted the text to be under, then how do you create space?
Oh, okay. So how do you create a space, right? Okay. So this is good. So say for example, you have a checkbox. I mean, you have a text box, and then you want a button, right? And then the value on the button is usually submit or press me, etc., right? And then the question is, when you do that, you get it right beside each other, right? So the question is, how do you go back to here? So you can do a number of things. You can do, you can insert a new line, or one easy way to do it is something called BR. BR puts a break in between the two, BR for break, and then that puts it on a separate line. Right on. Are we all together so far? So basically, in order to communicate to the computer, you have to give some code words. And the code words are all intuitive, right? So if you want to break to the next line, you put BR. If you want to tell the computer you're about to give some input, what's the code word for that? Input, exactly. If you want to tell the computer you're about to write a paragraph, what's the code word for that? P, right? P for? Paragraph. P for paragraph. Perfect. Okay, so it's very intuitive, right? It's not very complicated, is it? No, it's pretty straightforward. Okay. All right. So now we have some input. Let me show you some other cool inputs, right? So you know how you go to a computer and some websites and they say, hey, upload a file, right? What's that input type for that? What do you think it is?
Button.
Well, so button would just be a button, right? But you want to input a file. It's intuitive, right? It's just file, exactly. Yes. So file would be the file thing for that. So you just go ahead and just give it a shot. See what happens. Input type equal to file quoted. See, now you have choose file, and you can go on your computer and then choose files. You see that?
So then where does the file go?
Well, so now what we're doing now is just looking at the types of inputs, and then how do you grab that input and process it? That's going to be the next step. But that's a good question. But like right now, if you were to enter something in here, it doesn't really. You can enter it, but it doesn't do anything, right? So we're gonna look at how to make it do stuff. Some other cool ones is color. I thought color was a really cool. It's a really nice input type. Because this is a color picker actually, so you can go ahead and pick colors. Right? Isn't it cool? I thought it was cool. I actually didn't know. And you know when you do a password, but there's a special field, it actually does. You can't see it, right? Well, and what do you think See, I keep showing it to you before I ask it. What do you think? For those people that didn't see it, what do you think the keyword is for password? Password, right? Because when you start typing, it will automatically cover it up. Let's take a look at that. So this up here is a text box. You can actually see what I'm typing. This down here is a text box, but you can't see what I'm typing. Right? Okay, perfect. All right, so I think we've pretty much gone through it. You guys can experiment with the other input types. They're really cool. So the next question, though, is how do you grab input? Okay. So now you have a place. So a couple of things. You've seen how you can communicate with people, right? So as the website developer, Hello World is just an example. You can actually put a whole bunch of text there. Using a paragraph, line breaks, you can actually make an entire blog, right? So you can give information to your user, right? And then there's a place where a user can give information to you, right? So they can type stuff in there, and there are various ways of doing that. They can do this. They can pick a number. There's a date, a type. There's they can send you a file. They can select colors, etc. Right? So there's this, and then there's a button that you can do a button so that once somebody presses the button, they type stuff in here. They press a button, and then something happens. Okay. So now let's look at how we can make that happen. How do we take input from somebody and make that happen? So the first thing that you do is the following. The first thing that you do is tell the computer that this box exists. Okay. So you've told the computer that the box exists, but in a way by telling the computer that, hey, draw this box out. Okay. You told the computer draw the box out. But you haven't told the computer that, hey, I want to do something with this box. This box means something to me, right? So how do you do that? So that's where this idea of IDs come in, right? Last time what we did was we looked at the ID concept when we were talking about CSS style sheets. Some of you remember that. We're not going to go into that this time. But if you missed it, it's not a big deal. We'll probably cover it sometime again in the future. But this time what we want to do is we're going to do JavaScript, okay? And JavaScript allows you to grab input and do something with it. Okay, so how do you grab the input? Does anybody remember? Do you guys remember? Okay. Well, there are two ways to do it. The first way to do it is by using pure HTML, right? So what you do is you tell the computer that, hey, this text box here, I'm gonna get rid of this. So let's all start on the same page. Okay, let's have an input type equal to text. Okay, and then let's have an input type equal to button. And the button just says submit. All right. Get rid of well, you don't have to get rid of the hello world. So input type text, and then input type button, and the value equal to submit. So now you type something in here, and you press submit, nothing happens, but you can type something in here. Does everybody have that? We're all on the same page. Everybody's page looks like this, right? Okay, good. Okay. So what we do is anytime we have a tag, okay? So we have a paragraph tag here, we have an input tag here, we have a break tag here, and another input tag here. We want to tell the computer that we want to take something, whatever is entered in this input tag, which is in this text box here, and you want to process it. And there are actually two ways to do it. For people who are familiar with HTML, there's something called getElementById. So usually say an ID number here and say, hey, this input type, I want this input type ID to be something, okay? And then when you go to the head, you say, hey, get the element with the ID number or ID name of the following, and let's do something with it. That's one way to do it. We're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it in JavaScript. We're going to do it using something called jQuery. jQuery is a library of JavaScript. A library simply means it's a chunk of code that some really smart developers have put together, usually at huge companies like Yahoo and stuff, and they put it out there. And all you have to do is you don't have to write the entire code again, you just have to link to it. Okay, you just have to type in a link and say, hey, we're gonna pull in all the code into our code, okay? So let's start by doing that, okay? And then we'll see how jQuery can actually do that. So here's the link. Okay, so I'm not sure if it works with the bit.ly link, but in case it doesn't, we'll just have to type in the entire link. But if it does, then that's what I'll do. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just type in this bit.ly link. It actually, what does this link to, right? Once you finish typing it, I'll show you what it links to. You can actually put this in your browser and you'll see what it links to, but I'm going to Did everybody get this URL down? Got it? Okay, so what does it link to? Here's another project I was working on, and this is the entire, this is actually the code for it right here. So it's code.jquery.com mobile, and then it gives a version number, right? And this is what actually, jQuery is what actually makes a web app a web app. It does all the, you know how web apps, they actually look different? They actually have rounded corners. They actually, the drop-down menus look different. It allows the functionality to click, all of that stuff. That's jQuery on the back end. And when you convert this into a native app, like in Android or iOS, if you're not coding in it, you can use another program to convert this code directly into a BlackBerry app, for example. Then jQuery is what makes many of those functionalities happen. Okay. All right. So this is what the bit.ly thing leads to. Okay, so does everybody have this part? Right? And then this is the script. So script is JavaScript. You can write type equal to JavaScript, or usually it just accepts it. Okay. So what we want to do is you want to tell the computer that when you click on the button, I want something else to happen. Okay. And let's make something happen. Let's create a function. A function is a mini program that tells the computer, hey, let's do something, right? So let's create a function called affirmations. Okay. Okay. So look at the structure of a function, right? So this is one of the lessons from today. The function is started off by telling the computer function, right? A function is is simply a chunk of code that does something over and over again. Okay, it's like the crux behind a computer program, right? So a function, but then you can have like 30 different functions, right? So this one is called affirmations because what we're going to do is we're going to put somebody's name in that box, and then you press submit, and it's going to send an affirmation to that person. They're going to say like, hey, you're worth it, or something like that. And then these two open and close brackets, parentheses, they're needed for every function because they have two roles. The first role is that it tells the computer that this is the name of the function, and also you can actually put stuff in there. You can put stuff in these brackets that can then be used as code in your code later on. We're not going to go into that today, but that's something to keep in mind. When you open and close these brackets, everything in between is what the code is for that function. Okay, so this is just something you have to remember. To define a function, you just tell the computer function, give it a name, open close bracket, open close parentheses, and then open up a bracket, and then you can write everything inside it. All right. So that's just the structure of what a function is. Anybody have any questions about that? So what does this function do right now? It doesn't do anything, right? Because we didn't tell the computer to do anything, right? What do you want it to do? Let's do something, okay? Let's do that. Let's do this. Let's have somebody enter their name here. You press submit, and then the computer gives a message. Okay? You want to do that? That sound good? Okay. So let's do that. So a couple of things. How do you do that, right? So let's talk this through. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to tell the computer that there's a space here where I want to put messages. Okay? So how do we do that? Well, we go back here and we can make a paragraph, right? Or we can make something called a division, div. Div is just a division. It's just a different segment. Okay? And then let's give it an ID called messages. What do you think is going to go in here? What do you think is going to go in the messages section? The messages from the computer, right? Okay. So let's talk through this again. The computer, we're going to enter something in here. And when someone's pressed submit, it's going to grab whatever the name is from here, and then it's going to attach an affirmation to it, and then it's going to put it down here. Okay? Okay, so a couple of things. We have to get rid of this hello world, right? So we have to say, oh, let's ask for the person's name. So let's say, what's your name? Are you guys getting the hang of this, like jumping from a text to the browser, text to the browser? Are you guys getting the hang? Because this is exactly how it's done. It's make a change in the text editor, jump to the browser. Change the text editor, jump to the browser, right? Okay. So you ask the person what's your name, and the person's going to enter something in the text box, and they're going to hit submit. And when they hit submit, what do you want happening? Can anybody tell me what do you want happening? Someone presses submit. What do you want happening? What do you want to happen? A message, right? So, but in terms of her code, someone enters something in here, and then they press submit. What part of the code should we go to next? Exactly. So we should go up here next, right? Have we told the computer that when someone presses this, we should go up here? We haven't, right? How do you think we tell the computer that? Very intuitive. Huh?
Go to.
Exactly. Perfect. So you go, when someone clicks it, execute this. So you go on click equal to this function. If you have some other functions and some other buttons, you can say on click equal to that, right? So you go on click equal to the name of the function, right? So the name of the function is that up there. Okay. Does that make sense? So you can actually read this, right? So you can read it. So this is the button, and the value on the button is going to be submit. If somebody clicks on the button, I want this function to execute. So the function name is affirmations, and then the computer is going to go from here to here. So you see that it's all connected, right? Like in your code, like when you think about it in here, you ask yourself how it's going to be connected, and you look at the code and you actually walk through it, and everything is connected. Does that make sense? Am I going too fast? No?
I have a question. So how come we have the bit.ly link and also the function affirmations within head and not within body?
Okay, so anything that's one way to think of this, it's not the real way to do it, but one mental model that we need to think of this is like anything that does stuff that's cognitive, like it thinks about stuff, manipulates information in any way, you put it in the head, right? And anything that just displays stuff, you put it in the body. So you're asking, you want your computer to actually, you want your program to actually know that it should grab some code from this particular website here and make that part of your code, right? So that's why you put that up here, and then all the JavaScript and all the the cognitive stuff you also put in the head. That's why the function goes there.
Within the jQuery library, how does it know which code to pull out?
So it doesn't pull out the specific code. It pulls out. You're linking to all of the jQuery code.
Okay, so it pulls.
Yeah. So it doesn't actually pull it into your program. But what it does is it links. So every time you so you actually have to be connected to the internet. So every time you execute this, and then there's a jQuery. We're gonna look at the jQuery code words, just like how there are tags here that are code words. Like P is gonna be equal to paragraph. There's certain code words in jQuery, and then when that code word happens, the browser goes back to the library, checks out what that means, and comes back and then actually implements that in the browser. Okay. Okay. So now let's see what happens now, right? So let's talk our way through this again. So this paragraph says what's your name, and then here you have a text box, and then somebody types something in the text box, and then there's a button, and then in that button somebody presses it, and when they press that button, something happens. This affirmation gets executed, right? So that's pretty good. So everything's pretty linear now, right? Everything seems connected, except what should affirmations do, right? Well, what we want affirmations to do is take the person's name, right? Take the person's name, and then add something to it, add a message to it, and then display it in the messages section. Okay? Is everybody cool? Make sense? Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what the bit.ly link is doing right now.
So what the bit.ly link is doing is I'm going to show it to you in just a second. Okay. So let me show you what the Bitly link is doing. So remember I told you there are two ways to grab input, right? So people can put an input in here, but there are two ways to do it. One way to do it is by HTML, in which case you don't need jQuery, you don't need anything else. But the other way to do it is to actually use jQuery. And we're not going to code in jQuery, but what we're going to do is we're going to tell the computer, hey, there's a JavaScript module, there's a chunk of code of JavaScript called jQuery, and we want to use that functionality. Okay. And one of the functionalities that jQuery has is able to grab code from your HTML. It's able to grab input. So how does it grab input, right? So let's get to that in a second. But so let's get back to this for a second. I'm gonna come back to you. So you have the what's your name, person enters the name, and they click submit, and then what happens is whatever is in here gets pulled in here. Well, how does the computer know what's in here? Are we leaving something out? How does the computer know that to grab something from here? How are we going to reference this input? ID, right? So we're going to need an ID right here. So we're going to say, hey computer, whatever is in this text box of ID, human ID. What ID do people want? Name. Sure, we can call it name. We can call it anything we want. Let's call it some text, some name. Okay. So now let's talk this through again, right? Okay. So somebody enters some input in here. They press this button. When they press this button, affirmation function gets executed. In the affirmations function, you tell the computer to grab the input that was in here. And how do you tell the computer to grab the input? You tell the computer whatever is in ID some name, bring it in. Okay? So that's how you do it. So you go back here. So you say okay. So this is jQuery. This is what you're talking about. This is what jQuery is. So jQuery is this part right here. It tells the computer this is the code word. So if there's one thing that you need to remember about jQuery in this entire lesson, is just this part here, that when you have a $sign and you have an open parentheses and the number sign, you can put in the name of the variable, and the computer knows that, hey, we're talking about that particular ID. All right. So that's just the convention that jQuery has. They could have done something like grab something from this ID, but they didn't. This is what they wanted to do. So that's the convention. Does that make sense? It's like a little jump, but it's just a way to reference IDs. It's just a way to tell the computer, do this for this ID. Does that make sense? Yeah?
What is a .va?
So it's actually not .va. .val. So you're telling the computer whatever the value is in this box, in this box, the box that has the ID some name, that's the value I'm referring to right now. Okay. Except what you want to do typically is you can use that, but what works really well is to take whatever is in here, assign it to a variable, and that variable is what you can work with, right? So the way to do that is say variable some input equal to. All right. So why are we even introducing variables right now? It's just like we just throw everybody off. Well, the reason we're introducing variables is because we want to be able to do something with it. Okay. And that's one thing. The second thing is when you assign when you're assigning some values to a variable, then you can use that particular variable multiple times in your function and in your program. Or else what's going to happen is you're going to have to use this chunk of code every single time. Does that make sense? And that's not efficient because, say for example, well, I won't get into it, but it's not efficient to do it because you can actually make an error in your program because sometimes you want to make an assignment and then you want somebody else to come in, put in something else, and then you end up assigning it. By the time you finish processing this has changed, then it really throws everything off. So it's better to assign it to a variable and then continue from there. Okay, does everybody have this so far? Does that work? Okay, so let's talk through this again.
I have a question.
Go.
So, okay, so the $sign there is the one that refers to the jQuery.
Exactly. So the dollar tells the jQuery. Well, it's actually a little bit more technical than that. But for our mental model, we can say the dollar tells the jQuery that tells your browser that there's jQuery being referred to in here.
Okay. What if we like? What if?
So let me just say something else. And this number sign, if you guys remember from the CSS module, when we were talking about changing the background color and changing the font color, we also used a number sign, right? We used the number sign to refer to the ID, right? It's the same number sign. So this number sign is ID equal to some name, right? So this number sign means ID equal to. All right? Sorry, go ahead.
So if you were to load multiple script libraries, you would still just use the dollar?
It depends which script libraries you use, and
do they have a different sign?
Well, with jQuery, this is the convention for jQuery. I think there are lots of other script libraries too, and you just have to read the documentation for it. And I think many people who make these large libraries and they want it to be used widely, they try to maintain a similar convention. But sometimes it's not similar, and your code doesn't work. So you do have to go back to documentation, read it, make sure that it makes sense. But the idea behind all of these documentations, all of this code, is that you're telling the browser something very specific. You're taking your communication, converting it into something the browser understands. So this is something that we understand, right? We understand that we want the browser to take whatever value people have entered in this text box, whose ID we've given as some name, and we want it to do something, right? So in order to tell the computer that, we say, hey, jQuery, come in here. I want something. I want the value of the ID subname. All right? Does that make sense?
So the .val is the function that's in jQuery.
Yeah, .val is a function in jQuery. It basically tells your browser to grab the value from that text box. Cool?
So what happens on the browser?
Oh, okay, so what do you think will happen to the browser right now? So somebody comes in, they say, hey, what's your name? They go ahead and type in their name in here, and their whatever they type in gets the ID number, some name, and then they press submit, they hit submit, and then affirmations kicks in. They go to the function affirmations, and then what happens?
Nothing.
Yeah, nothing happens, right? Because all that happens is that the value is assigned to the variable. But so what did we say we wanted to do? We wanted, what did we say? Yeah, display a message, right? So this ID here, this is a division that we don't see in here because we haven't asked anything to be displayed. But we want to append something to this. So whatever message comes in, we want it to be appended to this. So let's go ahead and do that then. Let's go ahead and append something to that. So how did we say we refer to IDs again? Right, exactly, perfect. So you tell jQuery, hey jQuery, right? Bring in this following ID. And which ID are we gonna append stuff to? Messages, good. Messages, and what's the code? So the code word for getting the value is val, right? What's the code for appending stuff? It could be add. What else could it be? Append, right? Exactly. So that's exactly what it is. It's actually just append. And then append what? What do we want appended? Yeah. So the person's name. But then the person's name, we attached it to what? So how do we refer to the person's name again? Some input, exactly, because that's the variable that contains the person's name, right? So input, some input, right? So let's stop right here and think this through again one more time. Someone comes to a web page, they see what's your name, they write in their name, they press submit. That name, whatever they put in, their input gets some name attached to it, the variable ID, and then they hit submit, and function affirmation kicks in, right? So function affirmations takes whatever is in the some name value, attaches it to the variable some input, and then it goes to the messages section and appends some input. So when somebody executes this, what are you going to see? What did you expect to see? Just the name, right? Let's give it a shot. Go back here. Usually never works the first time around. Okay, well, it worked this time. I sound disappointed that it won't. Does it work for everybody? Did it work for you? Okay. Who else did it work for? Okay, good. Who else didn't it work for? Didn't work for you? Okay, a couple people. So it worked for a lot of us. For some of us, it didn't work. I think Nina will help out the people it didn't work. Okay, so but is this all we want? We just want the names to be spit out? No, right? We want an affirmation, right? We want to say, like, somebody presses this in the morning and they feel good about themselves, right? So let's just say, hey, someone puts in the name of David, and David, you're a rock star, okay? So how would we do that, right? So what we do is you go back here, you put it. So if you wait, I keep doing this. If you want to add text to their name, what would you do? Use plus sign, right? Okay, and then say for example the text you want to add is you're a rock star, right? How would we add that text? Perfect. You do quotations. You are a rock star, right? Except we should put a comma and a space so that it will be grammatically correct. All right, so let's go back here. Let's try that again. Perfect. Yeah. Let's put an exclamation point at the end. All right. Did everybody get this? Got it?
Can you scroll up a little bit?
On this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So what I noticed is that it multiplies that every time you do it. It doesn't really.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, so that's really good. Okay, so say for example, after I come, David comes along, and then it just adds it right to the end, right? Okay, well that kind of messes it all up. It's like one long string. So what you want to do is every time somebody comes, you want the affirmation on a different line, right? And how did we say we make a different line? Break, right? What is the code word for break?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so what we do is right here, right in the beginning of the of your message that you're going to do, you put BR. Put the BR tag. Refresh this. Cool? Does that make sense? Okay, so I think we're almost done. Let's just run really.
Sorry, how do we refresh the text box so that if some other person comes, let's put it right, definitely want to do that.
Oh, you mean the name? Okay, well, basically you're saying how do you empty
Reset,
this?
yeah.
How do you think you'd empty it?
Reset to nothing.
Yeah, so the way you empty it is just by saying empty. So what you do is you say that particular ID dot empty. I think that's what it is. Let's see if it works. No, it doesn't.
Wouldn't it be some input?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll check that out. I'm not 100% sure. But I think the dot empty is how you do it. But I think I'm doing it wrong right here. But in any case, so let's see what we've gone through today. But that's a really good point. We'll see how we do the empty part later. Okay, so what we've gone through today, right? So we've found a way to tell the people something, right? Here we're just asking for a name, okay? But we could ask for anything else. We can ask for the weight. We can ask for the height, right? And then here we've put a place where people can enter their input, right? Here they're entering in the name, but otherwise they can enter in their pounds and their inches, right? When they press submit, we give an affirmation. We say, hey, you're a rock star, right? But we can make a calculation in the back end. How do you think you make calculations? You just do add or subtract. It's like really, it's really easy. So here, after that, in the messages section, we output the name plus the message, hey, you're a rock star. We might as well just put out their BMI, right? And next week, what we're gonna see is we can actually put out a CHATS 2 score. So exact same process, we're just gonna repeat it, but we're gonna put out something meaningful, something that's relevant to clinical medicine.
Do you have to like declare the variable type?
No, you don't have to declare the variable type unless you really want to be specific about it. By default, if you say input, then it will accept integers, it will accept text, anything else that you put in there. But if you say integers only, then it will only take in integers, you don't take text. But we just good to leave it open for now. Any other questions? No? Okay. Was that too fast or was that slow enough? Next week, can we go on to the next section or should we review this a little bit? People who want me to review it a little bit, put up their hand. People who want me to go on to the next section, put up their hand. Next section, well, okay, so it looks like everyone got it then. Okay, perfect. All right, guys. I'll see you guys next week or maybe a week after.